Welcome to Love Life Season 2. I'm your host, Counselor Bev, and for the rest of the episodes, we will be meeting significant people all over the world to answer one question: what makes them love life? For today's episode, we will be meeting a woman with dynamic energy who has transitioned from a 20 plus year career as a Wall Street finance renewable energy executive to an aspiring travel adventure, spiritually transforming motivational author with a background that includes studying engineering at Cornell University and has an MBA degree in finance at New York University. She brings a unique blend of analytical prowess and a thirst for adventure. Get ready to join her as she turns her 30 plus travel journals, enriched by her experience of living in the heart of New York City, into captivating chronicle of her work as an author. With a unique blend of finance savvy and a passion of travel, you will know that her captivating page turner will capture the essence of her life innings. Join her as she travels, summiting mountains to encountering mystical experiences and the incredible people and sharks she's met along the way. Tune in and jump with us as we witness her transformational journey in answering how does she love life. I am honored and I'm so excited for you to meet Sara Roccisano. Where you said you're also into spirituality transformation. What word would best describe you for that? Spiritual.
It's a good question. I think you could make that determination because for me, I'm a student of it. I'm learning how to connect with self better, and I'm learning how to connect with a higher power, whatever that is. And I'm learning that there's something more beyond what meets the eye. And for me, that isn't necessarily religion per se, but there's something. And a lot of what I'm doing as part of these stories and books that I have in me are discussing how I left the world of finance and New York City and kind of that grind. And in doing so, when you surrender, you begin to seek more clearly. And in that surrendering, you begin to find your power within and sense of self and your non-negotiables. You become more powerful in that process rather than letting the world control you. You control your inner world, and then you are able to manifest the world beyond yourself in some ways. So that to me is spirituality, and that's this transformation that I'm referring to. But as I continue to learn about this, I've been working a lot with various spiritual teachers, mainly from the indigenous side. So Native American teachers here in the United States, priestesses, other sort of, light workers, energy workers, healers. And a lot of my travels in hindsight, but even now going forward, are really kind of centered around this discovery process. So that's what these books are about. It's a travel adventure story through my lens, which these travel adventures are always a lot of fun in everything I've done. But beyond that, though, there's more to it. There's an emboldening, getting courageous, but there's also a coming home to self and knowing your power and knowing how the world sees things in different lenses. But at the same time, there's some sort of common interconnected thread. The ancient cultures versus Asian cultures today and how they look at spirituality versus, South American cultures versus, lots of different places around the world, past, present, and potentially future, there's a common thread I'm seeing about people seeking and trying to understand the bigger picture and philosophical questions we all have, like who are we, why are we here, what's the meaning of life,
And that common
all
thread
these great
is,
things.
and that common thread is a higher power.
Uh, I think so. I think the common thread is that we're part of this oneness, this bigger, more infinite, intelligent consciousness.
Mhm,
And it's right in front of our eyes. It's in nature, it's in the patterns, it's in love and heartfelt
mhm,
connection, and it's in reciprocity, and it's in, you know, being able to coexist with other
mhm,
things around the world, whether it's different cultures or animals, or even how to work with your environment around you. So I think a lot of our problems in the world really are a result of not knowing who we are within and not having an appreciation for the other beyond, and also taking advantage of our environment.
yeah.
And, while I've built a career in renewable energy, I definitely think there's more to that story that a lot of us don't seem to be getting right now. That the importance is to stop cutting our trees down, stop destroying the Amazon rainforest, stop overfishing our waters. And a lot of this I see from traveling, from being a scuba diver, and when you start to destroy the balance of the ecosystem,
Mhm,
everything collapses, even your business, your capitalist structure, And I believe in capitalism to a degree, but when you start to disrespect
mhm,
the cycle of nature and how we coexist,
mhm,
and you break it down, that's where problems happen. So a lot of where I'm seeing really good opportunity, because I am an optimist in some ways, I do think that we're getting it now. We're starting to
mhm,
pick up on this. I think the individual is starting to see that we're awakening and we're not putting up with anything anymore. Like, I don't want to do that grind that I'm used to doing. I want to, life is short. I want to do
mhm.
something. I want to be emboldened. I want to go travel.
Yeah.
I want to see something new. I want a new experience. I want to talk to someone across the world, who I've never
Wow.
met before.
Yeah.
And so what I'm seeing is, just through my travels, that ecotourism is a really important component of travel. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean, carbon credits, when you get on an airplane, that's helpful. It's good to mitigate pollution and your footprint and what you do. But trees do that. The more trees you cut down, the less carbon dioxide gets sucked back into the earth, and then
Mhm,
oxygen, from the whole photosynthesis cycle. And the more we start destroying the ecological balance, the more trouble we're in. So if we start to embrace and emphasize the importance of that ecological balance, I think tourism becomes more
mhm.
interesting. And I
Yeah.
say that because I've seen examples in Palau, for instance, which is near you, the
Mhm.
country of Palau. I was there. It took me 30 hours to get there by plane from New York City. It was a very long flight,
Uh-huh.
or collection of flights. And Palau is a tiny little country, as you know. They clearly are not the size of the United States in terms of GDP. They
Mhm,
don't have economies that can compete, on the global scale. They're not powerful from that standpoint. However, why does Palau become a destination for people around the world? Why would I personally go 30 hours without sleeping, really, on 4 flights to get to Koror, which I think is the capital, Koror, Koror? Why would I do that? Why? Well, that makes no sense, right? Why am I spending all this money to go to Palau, right? I could go to the Philippines. I could go to beautiful places like Micronesia or Fiji or wherever. Why
mhm,
Palau? Well, the reason is they are, if not the first, one of the first countries that established a shark sanctuary. So their whole angle is ecotourism. So they realize that if they protect their waters, they protect it from overfishing the shark, which is happening at just very horrifying rates. I think they're saying I mean, conservatively, 100 million sharks are killed a year for shark fin soup. You know, a lot of these Chinese illegal fishing boats, we
Mm-hmm.
see them all over the world when we go diving. You know, they have these long lines where they catch the sharks. They're basically taking the sharks out of the water, finning them alive, and throwing them
Oh.
back in to die. It's a very horrific practice. And sharks are very intelligent and they're like dogs in a lot of ways. They're
Mm-hmm.
smart and they're not to be feared. Most of these sharks are not to be feared. A lot of these sharks are not sexually active until like age 7. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these sharks that are being fished out don't get a chance to reproduce. So that's what's happening. They're destroying these species, and these species don't get a fair chance to repopulate. So what does that mean? If the sharks are out of the water, they're gone, they're completely, eradicated. You're disrupting the ecological balance of the underwater. Because what happens, this is the same thing like the wolves in Yellowstone in the United States. They're finding when you bring the wolf back, the balance of the ecological kind of environment there rebounds. And you say, well, why? How's that possible? Because in the case of the shark, the reef shark, what it does is it polices basically the bigger fish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's going around. It'll eat a big like parrotfish or a grouper or something, and it balances. Maybe it eats a stingray. It's kind of is the chain, the food chain,
Yeah.
and then those larger predator fish that are in check, so they don't have to. Let's say the shark's gone, then there's more groupers. There's more these predator fish, so there's more of those fish that now are predating on the smaller fish in the coral reefs. And then when those smaller fish get eaten away, because you got all these bigger fish that are now in charge because the sharks are gone, um, you no longer have a balanced coral reef because those little fish eat away at the algae on the coral.
Mm-hmm.
So when the algae starts to overgrow on the coral starts to die. And then all of a sudden, your coral reef just broke down because you have so much algae, you don't have enough little fish, you have too many big fish, and you don't have any sharks. So that got disrupted.
Yeah.
And when that happens, the whole ocean starts to become a problem, right? So, the more sharks you kill, the more fish you overfish, the more the ocean is disrupted. And they're saying that the oceans are also the lungs of the earth. Not only is the Amazon rainforest the lungs of the earth, but so is the ocean. And no one talks about how important the algae and other sort of things that are microscopic in the
Mm-hmm.
ocean, they actually behave like plants. They
Mm-hmm.
behave like trees. They behave like the leaves on trees because they take in the carbon dioxide, they photosynthesize it,
Mm-hmm.
and out comes oxygen again. So people talk about, global warming and ocean acidification and all these great, horrible things that are potentially happening. You know, the earth can correct itself. It just can't correct itself. We don't know how quickly because we're disrupting the whole ecological flow. But if we focus on saving our oceans in an eco-tourist kind of way,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in this case, it's Palau. So they're like, dude, we're protecting our sharks. We have this whole swath of, nautical miles of beautiful water, not only from the rock islands that you can see, you could go on boat, you could do your tours. It's so beautiful, but underwater, and it's a scuba diver's paradise because when you're a diver and you want to see things, you want to see sharks. So a shark is worth more underwater than it is fished out on a dinner plate. They've done studies on this. One
Mm-hmm.
shark can repeat your tourism dollar over and over and over again. That
Mm-hmm.
shark lives for potentially 50 years. Some of these sharks live a very long time. So you have a 50-year-old shark showing up, looking with little beady eyes and little open teeth, and it's like, but it's not going to hurt you because they don't care. They've evolved to not eat humans. They only attack humans on the surface of the water because they think you're flapping around. They think you're a turtle or some sort of like bait ball that's being
Mm-hmm.
like attacked from the top and from
Mm-hmm.
the bottom. So, the birds coming down, the dolphins, everything's coming out. So when there's like splashing and, pandemonium, the shark's going to come and take an interesting, curious bite because that's how they test things out, by bite.
Uh-huh.
And then they realize, oh, you're nothing. I don't like you. You don't taste well. But unfortunately, that shark bit your, major artery and you bled out. So that's the problem. But underwater, and I am like, I've dove 300 times or more. I've seen tiger sharks like 15, 16 feet long
Uh-huh.
right in front of me.
Uh-huh.
I've seen great white sharks. I've seen humongous whale sharks. I've seen it all. I've seen schools of hammerheads, maybe 50 feet, 50 of them collectively. And I'm going descending down in the water, and the little hammerhead eyes on its little hammerhead
Mm-hmm.
head, poking out, like looking at me this way. And it's just, they just look at you. They're very shy, and they look at you as I'm descending down. And I look at them like, just literally went through a school of hammerhead sharks. That's freaking cool, man. So, like, when you're underwater, sharks are afraid of you.
Mm-hmm.
When you're above water, they don't know what you are, so they're a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
bold. But when you're underwater,
Wow.
they don't attack.
Yeah.
And so, because you're almost as big, if not bigger than them, they're afraid of your fins, and they're afraid of your bubbles, and they just are afraid of your size, because they're like, what the heck are you? So when you're underwater, you get to see these guys, and you're like, this is so cool. So of course Palau's going to be like, well, duh, this is how we get tourism dollars from around the world. We're a shark sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you're seeing other countries doing the same, like Chile, Easter Island. So I've been to Easter Island. Easter Island announced that they're protecting their oceans, their island, right? They're very dependent on fishing, and the more these international boats, illegal fishing fleets are coming and
Mm-hmm.
destroying their waters, the more at risk these people are for their daily life. So they know the importance of protecting their waters.
Mm-hmm.
There's other, I think Belize, I don't know if it's Belize, but there's others too that are now getting the hint that
Mm-hmm.
it's important to protect our oceans.
Yeah.
And it's for so many reasons, like I said, the environment, global warming mitigation, global
Mm-hmm.
tourism, dollars there.
Yeah.
So it's about being smart. Yeah.
Yeah. I can tell that awake, you're awakened, you're emboldened, and at the same time you have this passion for advocacies in plural form. But before you went from this part of who you are that I can hear and I can see, who were you when you were not yet sort of awakened and emboldened? Can you?
Oh, it's
Wow.
a great question.
Who were
Well,
you?
good. Well, I've always been this person. So it's not like I did this massive transformation. I just came back to self again. And that's what we all are, right? Like when we're born with a clean slate and we don't have any sort of external, you know, harm put onto us or controls or whatever it is, just life, we start to morph and adapt that way. But I think there's always an inner person of who you are. And I think that person for me is someone who loves nature, who's grown up
Mm-hmm.
in nature, someone who is adventurous, someone who liked to write. That was a prompt I had this morning for journaling, and it asked about my artistic kind of side and where that kind of came from all along when you were young. And I do remember as a kid writing books and reading books and always kind of having another story, when I was young. But then that writing went away,
Mm-hmm.
and I went towards the engineering side of my studies, math and science.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my focus in college. And then I went to business school, and then I worked on Wall Street. So that person, I guess, is what you're asking about. That person became part of the system in some ways, right? Like you're told, do well in school, which is always important because
Mm-hmm.
school opens your horizons, it opens your mind. But school's now changing in so many ways. Now the advent with the internet, like we can learn remotely, and it doesn't have to be in a structured setting like school. And that's why I do Embolden Adventures, because I want to show people the world through my lens. And there's more to learn just by getting out there, or at least seeing it through my lens, and being inspired to do the same for you. But I think for me, like, I kind of obviously went to school. I did well in school. I
Mm-hmm.
went to college. I did, decent in college. I had my struggles there. It was a hard curriculum, and I decided I wanted to go to New York and be on in Wall Street and like, do that because my family's originally from New York, from Brooklyn, and so for me, like, it just made sense. It's a familiar. New York City's familiar to me. It's kind of like bright lights, big city, a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Early 20s, my
Mm-hmm.
30s, having a fast-paced career and a fun life that came with it. Um, but in order to do that, it required conforming, and it required towing the line, and it required putting yourself second to the institution. And, the institution always was something in the past where you knew that if you gave your time, it would reward you, monetarily, success by, accolades and promotions and, projects you work on or whatever it is that, you decided you're going to put your career towards, focus your career on. But like I think now that's starting to crumble because people are realizing the institution isn't your friend and the institution has a way of harming you, and there's more layoffs than ever, and work stress, toxic experiences, you know, too much, too hard, and you have to sacrifice sometimes your personal life, your family, your friends, yourself because you have a job to do. So that person started to become like okay with that for a while and
For
blind and
for 20
unawakened.
years, Sarah, for 20
Yeah,
years plus,
I
for
know.
20
Thanks for the
plus years.
reminder.
I'm sorry.
It was
And
hard.
I mean, it was okay for 20 plus years. What was the wake up call? What was the reawakening? Because you were awakened when you were young. So
Yeah, we all are.
this
We
is
all are.
short. What was your
Well,
reawakening?
I I think it was had to have been 2010 when I decided I wanted to scuba dive because I I learned to dive a little bit when I was in high school. My parents took us to, living on the East Coast here in the United States. It's very, it's fairly easy to go to the Bahamas. It's not, it's like going to Florida. So it's beautiful Caribbean, and, they took us on a fun little family trip, which was, un, not with beyond our means. It was a nice little family trip. And it was like a Club Med, kind of all inclusive at the time. And for us, this was so exciting because, we've never been to the Caribbean. This is amazing. And so I got to test out scuba diving. I've always loved watching shark videos when I was very young, in
Wow.
the 1980s, nice National Geographic videos from the library I'd rent. I loved collecting shells. So for me, like going to Florida when we were a kid, Disney World, I was very young. But to me, the more important memory was going to the beach in Florida. I could care less about Mickey Mouse. I wanted to collect shells. So, and when I was young, I used to look at maps of the world and I used to look at flags of the world. And so I was always, and writing. So, those are things that were always interesting. And Egypt, ancient Egypt was always very interesting. So when I went scuba diving when I was young, I was like, oh, this is cool. But I had a little bit of an accident with my ears and it just wasn't a very pleasant experience. But I saw something on a news channel when I was working on Park Avenue in New York City in investment banking at the time, and it was a news article about the Georgia Aquarium in Atlanta, Georgia, here in the United States. And the Georgia Aquarium at the time had the largest indoor aquarium, like one tank in terms of volume of water in the world. And they had two whale sharks in that aquarium. And you can have the option to go to the aquarium and scuba dive with the whale shark in the tank, or you can go snorkel with them. And remembering that I watched this National Geographic Sharks video from 1985 and it showed a whale shark, and this was like early days, like underwater dive cameras were like the most high-tech technology you could find. People didn't know anything about sharks, really, scientists back then. Scuba diving equipment wasn't the greatest. So like this was like a really interesting documentary back then. Nobody really knew nobody knew sharks slept even. And so when I saw this humongous whale shark underwater and this diver was holding its tail, which you shouldn't do now, but at then they didn't know any better and they were holding its tail, massive.
Why?
And I
Why? Why?
went,
Why are you not supposed to hold the tail?
it's bothering a
Okay.
wild
All right. All
animal.
right.
You don't want to like
Okay.
bother a wild
Yeah.
animal. Plus, I think you may have bacteria on your hands. They also
Okay.
say that like if you wear sunscreen, and you go diving in the water or just snorkeling, that sunscreen can come off you and harm the coral.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing that why coral is, in trouble, is because the sunscreen particles are going onto the coral and acting like sunscreen. So it's
Mm.
preventing the coral from getting sunlight.
Yeah.
So it's chemicals. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could be harming the whale shark with, any sort of foreign bacteria
Mm-hmm.
you may have on your hands or
Mm-hmm.
chemicals that you have. Plus, you're harming them. You may be
Mm-hmm.
hurting
Yeah.
them. It's just not smart. You probably
Yeah.
shouldn't harass animals underwater or anything really. So anyway, I saw an option to go swim with a whale shark, and I was like, that's so amazing. So I went up to my coworker, and I was so excited. I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna fly to Atlanta for the weekend, and we're gonna go to the aquarium, and it's gonna be great. So you can see the smile now because it's like, I'm awakened. This is cool. Like I get some because I just finished my MBA program. It like freed up some time, some personal time, and I was pretty stressed out. We all are, in those kind of lines of work, and for me, my natural elixir is the ocean and being outdoors. So when you could change things up and, start to calm down, you do it through travel for me. And so I decided I was going to do it. And my coworker goes, well, why don't you just get scuba certified and go scuba diving instead of snorkeling? Like,
Mm-hmm.
duh. And I went, that's a great idea. So I, when I'd walk around Lexington Avenue on lunch breaks, there was a little dive shop right in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
It was Lexington and like 51st Street. And it was called Scuba Network. And I went in, it's not there anymore, but I went in. It was a tiny little shop. And, my passion I just described from all these years. And here I am, I'm in a dive shop. And I'm like, whoa, I want to learn how to scuba dive. And he goes, oh, by the way, we just happened to have a trip to the Maldives. You want to come? And I went, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, wow, right? And it was very cost effective, if you will, because the Maldives is expensive. But at the time, it was a live aboard dive boat, which is almost like a mini cruise ship. It was this beautiful yacht with like sails, and it's beautiful. And so I just had to fly to Malé, which is the capital of the Maldives, Male, it's spelled, with this group of divers in New York and New Jersey. And I get on the dive boat for a week, and you do dives 3 to 5 times a day. And you have a chef on board, and you have living quarters. And it just was very like convenient. Like you get to go around to see all these beautiful islands without having to spend the money on these resorts
Mm-hmm.
because you're on the liveaboard and you dive all day. I was like, that sounds incredible. So was motivated to get dive certified. I went to the aquarium. I went diving with the whale shark, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, this is incredible. And there was a hammerhead shark in there and everything. And you could see people looking at you through the window, and I'm waving to people. I'm like, this is insane. And so that was how I got bit by the passion of travel. And, once I was in the Maldives, this is why I'm telling you this story. It was dive camp for me because I think I showed up with maybe 10 dives under my belt. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
very experienced by the time I got there, but I learned a lot because I was around experienced divers and I got to go every day and
Mm-hmm.
really practice. And one of the dives you get to do in the Maldives is going to a cleaning station, is what they call. Do you know what a cleaning station is?
No.
Okay, so when you go diving and you're at a coral reef, there's an area they call a cleaning station. And what that is you see these larger fish, and in this case, it's manta rays, and they show up and they hover and they let the little fish, remember I said the whole balance of
Mm-hmm.
the ecosystem? The little fish come and they start to pick the parasites off the bigger fish. So it's a cleaning station. And so they're
Oh.
there, they were, wherever they were out in deep of water, coming back to the more, shallow reefs.
Mm-hmm.
And all these parasites they picked up in swimming, the little fish eat them. And so
Oh.
there's that, kind of balanced ecosystem because there's food source for them. Plus the manta rays, just like whales, their poop is like a plume of green. It looks like smoke that comes out of their butt, and it's like,
Cute.
but it's all particles. Yeah, it's like, and like you don't want to get behind that. My brother one time and I were snorkeling with baby seals, wild seals in Australia, and this one seal looked at my brother like they're very curious, they're very playful, they're very like bold. Right
Mhm.
here in front of my brother, and like barfed right in his face, like my brother's like,
Oh my
that's
God.
nasty. Yeah,
All
to this
fish.
day we talk about it. It's like he literally got the seal barfed in his face. So like it's like plumes of like fish particles that And you're great, you know. So when you're sitting in these cleaning stations, you know, these little parasites are being eaten, but they also poop. So the fish, it's amazing to witness because you're just sitting there watching the show, and this manta ray just took a massive dump and went,
Mhm.
you know, and all these fish all of a sudden go, oh my god, and they like go towards it and they all eat it up at this the
Uh-huh.
big ball, like ah.
They're
So it's
eating
just
poop.
they're eating the poop because it's all recycled,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's the balanced ecosystem. So for me, when I was there at the cleaning station, I'm holding down about 60 feet, or I think 30 meters. I think, yeah, I think that's 30, no, maybe 20 meters, 6 feet down, holding down, like watching the show. And manta rays like bubbles, unlike sharks. They like the bubbles. So the
Mhm.
bubbles coming out, they're like, this one manta ray's hovering over me, like get tickled by the bubbles. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a manta. I've never seen a manta ray. It's incredible. Its eye is like this big, the size of a cow.
Mhm.
And it's on the sides of its like little manta, like, you know, like feelers, right? And it has this beautiful angelic wing, and it just hovers.
Mm.
And they're very curious, very, you can tell they're smart, just like sharks. They're very smart. And this manta ray looked at me, and I had my mask, my goggles, my mask on, and I'm holding down, brand new divers pretty much. I'm like, oh my God, manta ray. And I connected. I could feel its soul. It was the strangest experience. I connected with the manta ray just by looking in its eye. You know, like it's as, you know, when you look into someone's eyes, sometimes you can make a real connection. That's what it felt like. And it zinged me in the heart. And I went, oh, and I started uncontrollably crying in joy. I was sobbing underwater. Tears were coming out of my eyes. I'm hyperventilating with the mouth because I was so emotional. I was
Mhm.
so touched by this manta ray, just staring in its eye. And I smiled at it, you know, even though I had the thing in my mouth, the regulator. I'm like, and I kind of, well, before I started crying, I smiled at it, like I crinkled
Mhm.
my eyes, like, oh my God, manta ray. And it emulated me. It crinkled its eye back somehow. I kid you not. It smiled back at me. And that's when I started crying.
I
And at
think,
that point,
yeah, I think you're a shark in your past life.
I'm a mermaid. Maybe.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
a
mermaid
mermaid.
maybe.
You're a
I know.
mermaid.
You know you're a diver when you're jealous of like dolphins. You're like, no fair. How come they could go faster than me? No fair. When you're underwater and you're like, they're going fast. Like three kicks of the tail and they're like way down that way,
Yeah.
and I'm still trying to keep up and I have to breathe air. So anyway, but that's where I felt a connection to a higher power, to God, in my mind. That was my first like, oh wow. And that's why I know that there's something powerful in nature, and there's something powerful in connecting with beings, sentient beings, whether they're sharks or cows or flowers or bees or whatever it is. So those are my first tastes of like an awakening. You know, I'm still very much entrenched in that old world in New York City, but it was my beginning of whoa, this is how I balance. This is how I can clear all this stress. This is how I could work towards something more important and more powerful, more meaningful, more rewarding. And so my diving really opened the doors to seeing the world, you know,
Yeah.
because then I'd start to see, okay, well, now I can go here, and then I'll add on a land tour. You know, like for instance, I went to Myanmar, which was an
Mhm.
incredible trip because we had an opportunity to go diving in Thailand and in Myanmar in the Andaman Sea. But we also got to explore the country of Myanmar,
Yeah.
which was pretty incredible.
Have you been to
But yeah, I have
Philippines?
lots.
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
Oh.
My uncle lives in the Philippines. He
Oh,
moved there
really?
from New Jersey.
Oh,
So I
whoa.
may. I
Which
mean, I'd
part?
like to go.
Which part?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it's near Cebu Island, but I'm not
Oh,
sure.
Cebu. Yeah, there's also
Cebu.
sharks, although I'm not sure if you will like it. The whale sharks there are kind of how do you call this? Tame for tourism. They were
They're what?
tame. They were tamed for tourism. It's like they're regularly being fed by planktons.
Oh, okay.
So is that, yeah. So I'm not sure if you will appreciate our whale sharks in Cebu. Yeah,
Oh,
but
I would love to see them.
yeah.
I would love any time to see a whale shark in the wild is pretty incredible. And I know the Philippines are known for their thresher sharks. Are you familiar with that?
Somewhere in, how do you call this? yeah, we also have great reefs here. I just forgot the specific province where treasure sharks can be found. Yeah.
But yeah, you go to the Philippines as a diver, not only for the beautiful,
Oh yeah,
you know,
I recall.
mount
Apo Reef.
upper reef. Okay.
Yeah, Apo Reef. Yeah.
And you get to see the threshers. Those are pretty cool looking. I've never seen one underwater, but from what I can tell from pictures, those look really awesome. So I know a
Mhm.
lot of divers tend to go to the Philippines for the hopes of seeing
Oh,
the thresher sharks.
wow. All right. So, sorry, just going back, like if you're talking to your younger self or even to younger people, like what would be like their clue or your clue to say that this is what my heart desires or this is in alignment with my higher self? Because we could be walking in our work, in our career, thinking initially that that's in alignment with our higher self, and then later on really finding out that it isn't. So what were your clues to really know that what I do is in alignment with my higher self?
I think joy, feeling assured, like knowing that even though the world may think this sounds like not smart, not logical, not like appropriate, not okay, right? The world's telling you no, but you're still saying no, but it still feels right. And you know what? I'm going to take a risk, even though on paper you're telling me it's not going to work or, it's too risky or whatever it is. But I'm going to trust that this is going to be okay because I feel good about it. I feel good here, right in my core. I feel good here in my heart. I'm like happy. I'm actually smiling. I'm like excitable about like just talking about something so simple about whatever this is, like for instance, sharks, right? Like, look at me get all excited about sharks.
Mm-hmm.
And people will be like, well, that's crazy. Why would you go put yourself in shark infested waters? It's
Mm-hmm.
nuts. Be like, well, I'm actually going to get on a plane halfway around the world. I'm going to do it. That okay? So it sounds like fun, right? So
Yeah.
it's that kind of reaction. It's like, you know, I'm going against the naysayer, right? And the naysayer could be pretty powerful because the naysayer pretty much is the institution in some ways. The
Mm-hmm.
naysayer is telling you, no, you got to work all these hours and you got to, you're not allowed vacation. You're not allowed to do anything. I tell you what to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that if that doesn't align with, well, okay, I don't want to do what you're telling me what to do. This doesn't feel right. I'm not happy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not joyous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually just kind of there,
Mm-hmm.
existing and lackluster and just like, ugh, the grind. Like, and then you get resentful,
Mm-hmm.
and then you feel like the bad energies around you because everyone else is mad.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not a good environment to put yourself in. And I think that's a clue
Mm-hmm.
to show yourself that this doesn't feel right. This doesn't align with me. But you need the dichotomy. You need both, right? You need to feel that so you realize I don't want it anymore. And that takes
Wow.
time.
Wow. Wow. That's a different way of looking at that, right?
You have to.
Yeah, how about, because not everyone has the luxury to go ahead and pursue the
That's right.
joy. Like how would they strike the
Well,
balance?
I think actually I just said that's right and I now disagree because joy is free. Joy's free. You could find joy in just walking through a field of flowers on your lunch break or whatever.
Wow, yeah. Doesn't have
You don't
to.
I don't have to you don't have to pay thousands of dollars to go to the Maldives. That's not joy. I mean, it's joyous, it's fun. I mean, it also could be terrible. It could be a big mistake because you realize I don't like sand and I don't like this country and I don't feel comfortable and all this other stuff. Like one person's what is it? One person's garbage is another person's treasure or something that's saying.
Mhm,
And you could have two people on the same exact trip and one person had the best time and the other person's like, I cannot wait to go home. And
mhm,
that's happened to me many times where people realize that this was not cut out for them. They don't feel comfortable doing this stuff and they want to go home now. So yeah, it's not you got to spend all this money and therefore you're happy. It's okay, well, how do I identify being that person on that trip saying this is the right fit as a
Mhm.
person who's like, well, I made a big mistake. Why am I even here? Same trip. So, yeah, joy is a feeling and it's free. And you could be joyous, I think, even just being online and watching these videos and learning. And, you know, that's the day and age we're in now. Like, there's a lot of motivational people online
Mhm.
that have more of a reach for you than people sitting right next to you. So
Wow.
there's ways to do it. There's ways to find your flow. And, sometimes you do have to like grit and bear it. Like, we all have to work. It's
Mhm.
sometimes not fun.
Mhm.
But I think I forget who said it. It was either Michael Dell or Steve Jobs or some of these visionary guy. But they basically said that, like, this is what I do. I always mess up saying, so I'm going to just badly paraphrase. But essentially, you don't have to work a day in your life if you enjoy what you do,
Mhm.
right? So, one person showing up every day behind a computer under the fluorescent lights in an office building in New York City might think that this is the most exciting. I'm so happy. Like, this is what I've strived my entire life to do. Look at me. I'm so thrilled, and I will be doing this for 30 years of my life. Like, some people are perfectly all right with that, and more power to them. Some people, now I'm realizing I'm on this side of the fence more so than ever. Some people are like, you cannot pay me enough to sit in an office all day. I can't do it. I need to be outside. I need to be, dirt in my hands. I need to like have an unpredictable schedule. Um, I need to be like a plumber, for instance. And I say
Wow.
that because I know someone dear to my heart who's taken that. He's very smart. He's taken that and he's become a business owner and he's loving life. He can call the shots and everything he does. So, I'd say success is personal. And my definition of success is essentially what I was just saying, that kind of thought that I was trying to paraphrase is I truly think success is personal to the individual. It's not what society says. It's what you say and define as your joy. And to me, I think a successful person is someone who has full control over their day. And no one else can tell them what to do because at the end of the day, this is what I'm doing. And you can't, say, where was this project? Or you were late on this, deliverable. And, you're getting written up by HR because you're just, not listening and
Mhm.
not a good little worker bee, or, all those sort of things. Like, okay, that's fine. That's not success in my mind because someone else is controlling you and telling you how you need to be. Well, you got all this money because now you've listened to me and you've made the company money and you're successful and the company's okay. That's short term. That's not long term. I mean, you could look at my LinkedIn resume and you could say, "Oh my God, you did so many things." Like, I'll just say for the sake of saying it, I 30 billion in deals and I closed 40% of that. So, it's a huge success. Is it something I like? I I don't really care. Like, I don't. It's a means to an end in the sense of where I am now. Like, here I am, quit a job and quit my career and throwing my life away in New York City. I'm selling my apartment and I'm calling for a new chapter. And I think that I'm successful now because I'm in full control of my calendar, my schedule. Even though I might not be making any dollars right now, I think I'm more successful than that person, you know, that you asked me to talk to in that scenario. Like, what would you say to that person?
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Wow.
Yeah,
Let me just pause for a moment to really grasp that and breathe that. Wow. Whew. All right. So I just have some quick questions for you, Sarah. These are
of
just
course.
about very fun things about your travels. All right. So most beautiful place you've been to.
Most beautiful place I've been to. Oh, I know that. This is going to be part of my book that I'm writing, my 5 week adventure. Uh, the most beautiful place I've ever been is in the Andes Mountains, very far away in Bolivia. In
Can you?
Bolivia.
Okay. Uh,
And I'll send you a picture of this. It's a lake that was reflecting all these beautiful colors from the clouds, these cumulus white clouds. And in the background, there's these volcanoes that are
mhm,
dormant, and one was snow capped. And that was like a pastel sort of gray blue color, like this.
mhm,
And the lake was reflecting greens, like pastel greens, pastel pinks, pastel like blues, all these different beautiful, it was like almost like a painting easel of different
mhm.
like colors of paint. And there in the lake was a sea, literally a sea of pink flamingos. Yeah, it was the coolest
Mm.
thing in the world.
So
It was
excited to
so
see that.
cool. It was stunning. It was the most beautiful day of my life. And then the next day, I was very fortunate to see the salt flats. So the salt flats of Uyuni, it's a Sal de Uyuni, it's called in Spanish. And I'm sure you've seen photos of this. This is a travel blogger's dream that no travel blogger tends to go to. A lot of people from Korea, you find, and I think Japan tend to go there, but no one really from the United States or anywhere else for that matter. But it's a flat um, bit of water
Mhm,
that is on top of a salt flat. So just all white salt that's naturally forming, all flat. It's a former lake bed, ancient lake bed. And then when the rains come, it has a little bit of water that you wear these like rubber boots. And the reflection of the sky onto the water, it looks like there's no horizon.
mhm.
And it's like it's flipped, right? So the sky is the water and the water is the sky, and then you stand there. So my Embolden Adventures website, there's a picture of me doing a jumping jack. That's it.
Okay,
And
I'm
then you
gonna
could
check it
also
out.
check it out. Yeah, it's the main page. And then also what you do with like photographs, like fun photography, is like because of the way that the optical illusion is, because of the white, things that are far away and things that are close make it look like the thing that's really close is super big and the people far away are super small. So you could do fun like shots
Mhm.
like a plastic Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's what we did. And like we're like literally maybe 10, 15 feet away, but the way it looks like the dinosaur is about to eat us. Or like you
Mm.
see all these fun little photos like someone put a soda can and it looks like you're jumping out of the soda can because you're 20 feet away from the soda
Oh,
can. So that's where you can go and kind of have fun creatively, and there's hardly anybody there,
was it a
both
what?
places.
Both places. Okay. Next would be, what was your greatest adventure?
My greatest adventure, oh my god, there's so many. My goodness, I don't know how to, I guess I need to define the word great. uh how would you define the word great for me? Maybe that could help me narrow it down. What does
All
great
right.
mean?
Maybe deepest happiness, joy, like sense of like you're in flow, or that moment.
Excitement.
Yeah, maybe when you saw the when you first saw the manta ray's eyes and you connected with it and you felt the same in this adventure. Maybe that's it. What's that
Okay,
adventure that
so
you?
when I've been like, there's a term in the New Yorkers use called verklempt. I don't know if you've heard that term. Like, I think Mike Myers and Saturday Night Live used to
Mhm.
when he was like Coffee Talk,
Okay.
Linda from Coffee Talk. Verklempt. It's like a word like I'm
Okay.
verklempt. It's a Jewish word. It's Yiddish. Verklempt. Ugh. So like your breath is taken away. You're overwhelmed with emotion in a good way. Verklempt. I'm verklempt. So I think that's the question. What you're getting at. So okay, I had that moment of like breathtaking, like I'm about to cry, that kind of moment is when I was about to summit Mount Kilimanjaro. So it took us 6.5 days to get up to the mountain and a day and a half to get down. And I live in New York City, or soon to be not living in New York City, but I trained by walking around the city, which
Mhm.
actually worked out very well. I city biked everywhere. I walked all the bridges along the East River. I walked the bridge on the George Washington Bridge on the Hudson River. And that bridge work, the inclines and like just the long duration of walking and the yoga I did and the city bike prepared me to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. If you could figure, it's like this urban person is like summiting the mountain. And when we were slowly walking up, and you could see the what are the glaciers that are at the top of the mountain that are just right there, and they're huge and they're sheared, and you're like,
Mhm.
where am I? So you're walking, like I could even still hear the gravel every step
Mhm.
I took, because everything at the top of mountains are more gravel, and it's just there's nothing that's there. And so you just see the sky. It's the rooftop of Africa, the highest point in all of the continent, and you're on the equator, which is ironic too. And then you have all these like icebergs, glaciers, and you're little by little, but it's such a long line of people, so you don't know where you're going. It's just sunny, and everyone's going this slow, very slow. And then we're getting closer and closer, and then all of a sudden someone moves, and I could see that little sign in the distance at the apex.
Mhm.
It's just like a big, long kind of like um, incline. It wasn't
Mhm.
like, the top of a rugged mountain. It was like just an incline
Yeah.
up, this pathway. It's like, oh, wow, there it is. We're going, but again, it was like, I called it slow motion success in my little video. I'm like, it's slow motion success because like you're going like I'm almost there, but I'm still going. Yeah. And you were
Slow motion.
tired. There's slow motion success, lack of oxygen, so you can't run. You have to go slow. Like, I see it, but it's right so far away. That was the same thing when I ran the New York City Marathon. It's 26.2 miles, and that point two, because you just ran 26, you're like, but I still have point two. And that point two is up a hill in Central Park, and it's a really hard hill. And you're like, this sucks. Like, I have point two left. Ah! It's like that. It's like, come on. Slow motion. So tired. And so that's what it was like. And then as I finally got closer, like, I don't know, 10 feet away, I saw the sign for real. And that's when I went, I just climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. So yeah, that was a great moment of adventure for sure.
Please do
Yeah,
share a photo.
I will. Okay, so
Ah,
I have lots of photos to share with you.
yeah.
The beautiful Bolivian plains with the flamingos,
Andes.
the salt flats, and Kilimanjaro. And
Wow.
maybe I could give you like a shark or two, a photo of shark or two.
All right. What's your we talk about adventures and travels from the past. How about your dream place to go? Haven't been yet.
Dream place. Okay, can you define dream?
Wow. Um, yeah. What's your like maybe next place that you'd like to visit that you haven't visited yet?
There's so many wonderful places. My, I'd love to see an Antarctica, but that's definitely not coming up soon on the agenda.
How about
I'd love to
Everest?
see.
Have you been? Have you been to Mount Everest?
No, I'd love to go to Nepal. I have a friend, Chembal, who lives in Kathmandu, and he's a travel agent. So I am thinking about planning a trip for
Wow.
people. I'll open it up and bring others, but I'd love to go to the Himalayas, Tibet, Nepal, and Bhutan.
Mhm.
And part of that, trip, that itinerary is going to be taking a helicopter ride potentially and seeing Mount Everest or seeing it somewhere in the horizon.
Mhm.
I'd like to do a trek to base camp. That
Mm.
actually is a lot similar to climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, if you could
Mhm.
believe it. Like, it takes, I think, 10 days, and the altitude is just as high, if not
Mhm.
higher, in some places than Kilimanjaro's apex.
Yeah.
So if you walk to base camp, it's equivalent to climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, because
Wow.
base camp, the bottom of Himalaya, Mount Everest, is the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. So the hike you do to get to base camp is like hiking Mount Kilimanjaro. Like I
Wow.
said, it's like altitude sickness you got to be careful of, exhaustion. It's colder. It's a lot colder than Kili, and you're at altitude longer than you would. So it is a bit of a hike, and I would love to do it. I just
Mhm.
don't know if I'd do it the same time I go visit Nepal, Bhutan, and Tibet, because
Mm.
it's its own trip. But I don't have any plans to hike Everest to the top. That's just not something that is of interest to me.
Mhm.
Um, it is a big undertaking, and it's
Yeah.
very risky,
Mhm.
and I just don't really. It's okay. I don't need to do it. It's fine.
I'm more of an ocean person. Yeah. All right.
So you would
Sarah,
do the depths of the oceans? Would you go into like
no,
the
oh no,
submarine, submersible? Why not? You can. There are
Sarah.
options to get into those submarines.
Yeah,
You have to wear a
Sarah.
diaper though.
Sarah, I'm very your opposite. Yeah, I'm very your opposite. Like I'm so chill. I'm not really adventurous. So everything that you're saying just so fascinating in my ear. Like I kind of feel like, okay, I think I need to see more of the world from now on. Yeah,
And
that's how you make me feel. Like there's a lot of things that I haven't seen, haven't experienced, haven't tasted. Yeah. All right.
where you live though, your part of the world, there's a lot of really great places to see. Just like I said, the Caribbean for me is, accessible. It's
Mhm.
whereas for you going to the Caribbean would be very hard. However, where you are, you got a lot of great places. You're near Cambodia. You can go to
Yeah.
Angkor Wat. You're near
Yeah.
like Indonesia. They have
Yeah.
beautiful coral reefs there. You got Australia. You got all these great places. New
Yeah.
Zealand. I mean, I know it's kind of far, but go to New Zealand. That's really
Uh-huh.
amazing. Like that would take me forever to get there. In fact, when my friends live in Melbourne, Australia, and we went there for New Year's Eve, and
Mhm.
they're 16 hours ahead, and it's amazing because we celebrated the ball drop
Mhm.
with them, and we went to bed, we woke up, we had brunch, and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I think it was, is when New York was saying Happy New Year, which was so wild. And yet when we
Mm.
were there at the party waiting for the ball drop the night before, there was someone from New Zealand there, and she's like, "Oh, my family just celebrated 3 hours ago." We're like, "Wait, what? New Zealand's that far away? That's incredible." So that's what puts in perspective. You're like, "My
Mhm.
goodness, that's far, really
Yeah.
far."
All right. I am down to my second to the last question. All right. So my second to the last question is we've shared about your story, you talking to your past self. How about, looking forward, a message to your future self?
Well, I see my future self as like my wise elder. When you become like the wise grandma who like
Mm-hmm.
has seen it all and is like, all right, grandma knows what's going on. Like you got to talk to me. Everything you worry about is no big deal because you can get through it. So me now talking to that person, it's almost as if I'm the student to that person, and I'm not sure what that person needs to hear from me today. Although there are moments, we're all human, where we get down on ourselves and we are unsure. Like, I can't claim to say I know it all and I'm 100% confident and cool and chill all the time. I have my moments of doubt and they happen all the time, insecurities and everything. So, even though I have these grand aspirations to like continue to be bold and do great things and just, give it up to the universe and let it work itself out on my behalf. There's still doubt and concern. So I presume that future person's going to also have that. And, you know, part of my book that I'm writing now was an awakening that I had in the Amazon rainforest. And I was working with the shamans, and it was pretty incredible. And I got to experience like what it's like to potentially die because I was doing ayahuasca and some psychedelic work, and it was
Mm-hmm.
pretty profound. And there's an ego death that goes on when you work with these plant medicines and ceremonial medicines. And, you're in the protective guidance of the shamans and the protective, kind of maloka that they are in. So, it's a healing, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
healing that's guided and supervised from these indigenous professionals, if you
Mm-hmm.
will,
Mm-hmm.
wisdom keepers. So sometimes people will go to the edge and some people go beyond the edge and experience, even though you're not going to die, but in that moment you're in that process of dying, and it's like, oh, what they think dying is like. And quite frankly, like for me, like it wasn't scary. It wasn't scary at all. It was very like liberating and freeing, and it helped me to see that there's something beyond this material veil, and something that's infinite and all loving, and you know, you are you're always living on. You know, there's never an end. It's not finite. And so I was very comforted by what I learned. I think though that in my future I probably am going to get to the point of being scared potentially again. Like, God forbid, I get diagnosed with cancer and it's terminal, or, you know, I'm at the point of my deathbed and I'm like, crap, I got to say goodbye and let go. And that's really your ego doing that talking. That's like holding on for dear life
Mm-hmm.
and gripping, like, no, I can't
Mm-hmm.
go. It's no,
Mm-hmm.
I refuse. You know, that's the ego. It's not your
Mm-hmm.
soul. Your soul is like an
Mm.
infinite wisdom. It's like, it's okay. It's just a body, you know, like we'll get another one again. That's fine. Like you can't live in a body that's falling apart. You'll get another one. And, you know, so that's kind of like the idea. So I guess in those moments of like admitting it's time to go and let go and surrender and trust, like that's kind of what I went through already, a surrendering and a trust. I killed an old version of me and I'm embracing a new version of me now. And that requires surrender and trust in self and trust in a higher power. And so I think that future self who's getting nervous and is on my deathbed and it's like, great, here we go. Like I'm dying now. Um, I'm sure there's going to be some fear. And I think this person is going to be like, what are you afraid of? You know what you saw. It's gonna be fine. You just gotta, you know, tie up your loose ends, say goodbye to all the people you love, make sure you connect with them heartfelt, you know, in the afterlife. Find ways to like let them know they'll always be loved. Like just, you know, set yourself up for your passing and to allow for them to be okay with that and let you go and still know that you're still there in your heart no matter what. So I think that's gonna be a message I think the future self probably will need to hear at some point.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've already answered this, but last question for me is, what is your love life mantra?
Love life mantra. Oh my goodness. Does it have to be love life specifically, or like just
Loving
being
your life.
passionate with
Yeah.
life? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, not like romantic. Okay. Um, so this mantra is one I was using during ceremonies that I just mentioned, and it's part of my book, and it really helped with the surrender piece of doing the psychedelics and you know getting the courage to finally drink the brew because it does take a
Mm-hmm.
lot of courage to do psychedelics. And so I would say that I'm borrowing it from my old yoga teacher in New York City, who's pretty, you know, colorful and full of life and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fun. And, you know, she's an entrepreneur. I always liked her. And she used to have this mantra all the time in yoga that I've adopted now. And I think it's perfect. It's magic takes guts,
Wow. Wow.
right? Magic takes guts. So that means, and surrender too, but magic takes guts, meaning, you know, if you really want to be be a vessel of possibility, allow for really great things to happen, to like live the life you feels right for you, you're going to have guts, but that's the magic, right? Let the
Mm-hmm.
magic flow, hold the space for it, but have the guts and the trust that it will work in your favor. It's called, there's a term, I really like this a lot. This guy, Duncan Trussell, I really like a lot. He's a comedian, but he's a podcaster as well. He's very spiritually aligned. And he talked about this on the Joe Rogan podcast once, which I really liked a lot. He said there's a term called pronoia. Have you heard this term,
Oh
pronoia?
no. I think I did, but
Okay.
not the meaning really.
So the term pronoia is the opposite of paranoia. Pronoia instead of paranoia.
Mm.
And what that means, so when you're paranoid, you believe the world's out to get you. The world's going to get me. The universe hates me. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
everything is working against me. right? You're paranoid. Oh my God, everything, they're coming to get me. Who's they? I don't know. You're paranoid. Pronoia is the opposite. You have a full belief that the universe is working in your favor. The universe is here to help you. And
Wow.
if you ask, you shall receive, but you got to do the work. You got to manifest it as well and hold the space. So that's the magic takes guts, right? Like the universe is going to deliver what you want. It's not going to deliver it on the timeline you snap your fingers on. But if you hold the space and you surrender and you trust and you know how to listen to your heart and you know what feels right and you know how to stick up and say no because things don't feel right, you put barriers and boundaries and say, nope, not going to work for me. Too bad. Be a New Yorker. Tell them too bad. Too bad. Tough luck. Tough shit. Forget about it, right? Too bad. It's not going to work. It doesn't work for me. This works for me. So you have magic takes guts. Have trust that things will deliver for your benefit.
Wow, lovely. I don't like our conversation to end, but Sarah, I learned a lot from you. Go ahead and invite our viewers, our listeners to go ahead and learn more from you. Where can they catch you? Where can they get your books,
Well,
your adventures?
Embolden Adventures. Thank you, Beverly, for having me. We are in the process of rebranding and stepping it up. So, fixing the website, doing, more on social media, more. I'm seeing that this is going to be important, the communication piece. I'm not doing enough of being in front and speaking. So I think there's going to be more YouTube content, more TikTok content, um, book. There's going to be a book. There's going to be lots of different ways that I'm communicating and emboldening people because that's the whole point. It's adventure, love life, passion in travel and seeing the world from a spiritual angle, discovery, self discovery, being emboldened. So, that's my focus now. I quit my job, I quit my career. We're reprocessing, retooling with the intent to be a storyteller. I'm going to be a communicator. I'm a storyteller. I'm a writer, and in these particular elements of the world that I've seen, and there's angles of my beautiful travel that may not be other angles of other travel bloggers, but the whole nexus is to be emboldened, to be be passionate, to seek self within. And you could find me on emboldenadventures.com, EMBOLDEN, emboldenadventures.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. So, we're getting there.
Wow.
You'll start to see us growing some more.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for
Thank
sharing your
you. My
emboldened
pleasure.
adventures. Thank you for sharing that awakening. I have a lot of learnings. I'm sure our viewers, listeners will also have a lot of ahas, a lot of wow, a lot of strength, courage to really find that gut joy and follow whatever it is that, really have to take that path. Thank you, Sarah, for your
Yeah, my
generosity. Thank you for
pleasure.
your time and for your
You're
wisdom, for your
welcome.
experience. All right. So
Thank
thank
you for
you.
having me, of
You're
course. And yeah,
welcome.
feel free to reach out. Like, I'm happy to
Yeah, I'll wait
connect.
for the
And
pictures.
yeah,
I'll wait
yeah.
for
Oh,
the
yeah.
pictures.
I'll send you the pictures. But even your listeners, do you have any questions? DM me. Let me know you heard me on the podcast. Happy to have a quick chat. And if you have any questions, happy to talk about sharks. I don't know. We'll see. And if I
Wow.
go to the Philippines, maybe
Yes,
we could say
please
hello.
chat.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll visit you in Cebu.
That'd be great. We'll look
Yeah.
for thresher sharks. We'll make sure
All
we'll
right.
make a point of going to see them
All right.
and the whale sharks.
Bye. Bye bye,
Bye.
Sarah.
Take care.